Hey, I'm Michael. This video today is about reupholstering these Recaro sport seats. These were found in early 80s Porsche 911s and Porsche 944s and maybe some other cars. These are the non-power option. So I'm making this video because I've purchased the upholstery kit from Only944. However, their instructions mostly pertain to the later 85.5 and up power seats that are not the sports seats. So upon doing this first seat, which I'm sitting in at the moment, I discovered there were actually some significant differences I thought would be worth documenting, hence why I'm making this video. So at the moment, I've just completed this seat here, which I'll move out of the way for. This is a driver's side seat. This is the brown perforated vinyl. There's a few wrinkles still yet to be worked out. I'm hoping that with heat and with time that this will look really sharp. It's already starting to look really nice on this side, and the lower is already pretty much wrinkle free. On the passenger side, that's what I'm going to be essentially using for this video. I'll be doing a walkthrough of stripping the seat, doing some foam repair if needed, which I've already actually done on this seat, and then installing the new Only944 vinyl skin. So this is the Berber tweed option, and it's actually in pretty good condition, so I'm going to be actually saving the skin off of this. Maybe there's an enthusiast out there that would want it for their project, as I was unable to track down matching Berber tweed, so I went with the brown vinyl instead. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to start taking the seat apart, and we'll look at the steps needed to do so without damaging the original upholstery or any of the foam as we do it.
So these seats have now been installed for about 6 months, and I'm taking this clip as a reference. So in the video, you're going to see a lot of these pieces that have wrinkles in them and things like that. And you might be thinking, I wonder how that's going to work itself out. Is that too much? What can be expected as far as how much that will go away with time and maybe with heat, humidity, things like that. So revert to this portion of the video later on if you're not sure. So here's the passenger seat, which you're going to see me reupholster in the upcoming video. Kind of see that virtually all of the wrinkles have worked themselves out of most of these parts here. There's maybe a couple little indents here and there just from the seam, but I mean, come on, it's a B+ job. It was a DIY effort. Virtually all the wrinkles are gone from the bolsters here. Yeah, maybe there's a little bit, when someone's sitting in it, it pulls it tight. I had to do a little bit of massaging on all this, and this hasn't been sat in maybe but 10 times really since I put them in, but everything else looks great. There's really no wrinkles anywhere. Go to the driver's side. Sorry, there's a million projects going on right now in this garage, so it's a big mess. Pardon me for that. The lighting is not as good over here, but in the last clip you saw me sitting in this seat in my living room, and remember all the wrinkles that were kind of in these areas. Well, they're pretty much all worked out now. It's getting even better with time. There's a few that are left around these piping seams, but on the whole, this is worked out really nicely. So there's virtually none at all on these seat bottom bolsters, and of course on the top it's the same story. It's really crisp. So keep this in mind for the rest of the video. Don't be discouraged if your seat has a couple wrinkles or whatever in it, because the material, again, over time you're going to find that it kind of self-relieves. It'll kind of just stretch and equalize the stresses amongst itself and redistribute them, just because the material itself can kind of creep, kind of like it is a polymer, right? So yeah, again, don't be discouraged. Just have patience with it. They come out looking great. So I'm really happy with these.
With all that aside, you're going to want to move into, the first thing is document the old seat. And I can't stress this enough. If possible, I'd actually have your other seat be nearby so you can go over to it and check it if there's something you're not sure about. For example, maybe it's the way that the material is wrapped around, like where the hog rings go, what overlaps what, like this is overlapping that sort of thing. Another key area is going to be probably around this control section. So you would have the lever. I don't know where the lever to this one went, But there's a cable that goes down, and then you obviously have your manual seat back adjustment there, but you can see the cable goes into this little, I don't know, a receptacle for it. With all that done, the next step is going to be to separate the seat bottom from the seat back. On this side, it's just a simple flathead bolt. This comes out. There should be a plastic washer behind that, so don't lose track of that. And on the other side, where your adjuster is, it's actually two bolts. They're 13mm head bolts. And to get to them, we'll need to remove this little wheel here, as well as this plastic back piece. So I've gone ahead, I have a couple from a different seat here. You can kind of have a better look at, well, it's already off. So this comes apart. There are these little clips all the way around, so you'll probably want to use something like a small flathead to gently pry this apart without breaking it, which it looks like one was broken on this, but I think I do have a spare over here. And then, as you can see, this interfaces with the actual mechanism. So this clips onto this like that, and then this is behind it. So this would go kind of behind all of this. You can see it here. Alright, so using a small screwdriver, I was able to work around and pop this off. I did have a casualty. One of the plastic pieces is still stuck in there, but I think it'll go back together fine. You can see now how this is retained on here. So if we look back at the piece, this is what it looked like when it does come off. You can see that there's this thin spring plate almost that's sandwiching these three sections of the plastic adjuster wheel into place. But if we were to spin this, what would that be, like 60 degrees or something, then we should be able to basically move this spring washer into these gaps, and then this will come right off. So what I'm going to do is just use a screwdriver to hold this stationary whilst I spin the wheel a little bit until we get this piece out. Alright, so I actually ended up using some pliers. I put the needle nose tips through these two holes here to just hold this star wheel still while I spun the adjuster counterclockwise, and as you can see, sure enough, this allowed the spring retainer to back off of the flats here, and this can now go over here. This next piece, again, it just pops out. There's that little kind of interference fit dowel that goes in there. Nothing to it. We now have access to the two 13mm head bolts. When those come out and you take out the flathead screw from the other side, the only thing holding it together will be that cable. So we will go ahead and take that cable out next. Okay, to release the cable, there is this little piece of steel that comes out of the frame. And on that piece of steel is this little, it's just like a thin little sheet metal bracket. And the socket of the wire punches through it. The bracket kind of has these little tabs on the bottom of it. I don't know how well you can see this. That what I'm going to do is just use a very small flathead to kind of pry them. So right now they're like this. I'm going to pry them to be outward like that. That should allow the little bullet nose of the socket to come back out through this way. At which point, when we're done, we'll bend them back together at the tail end of the project. But that's going to be the strategy for getting this cable undone. Alright, so I wasn't able to get this big flathead bolt to start moving with a normal flathead, so I did the old vice grips around the flats trick here, and that cracked it free. So if you have the same problem, get like a box end wrench or something, or vice grips, and slip it on the flats of a good screwdriver, and that worked for me. Alright, so on the stack up here, this bolt comes out, the bolt goes right into this, and then you have this plastic washer though that sits between the seat back boss here, and it goes on the inside of this little flange here on the seat bottom. Alright, let's shift gears back to the wire. So as I just showed, I decided to start decoupling the two for better access. I wasn't really able to pry the two little ears apart on the bottom of this clip without really, I didn't feel like I was going to be able to get it. But I can get it from here. And in fact, from this angle, you can hopefully see what I'm talking about. You can kind of see the two little things on the bottom that are just
if we bend them, we pry them back out a little bit, that socket will be able to slip right up on through. However, while I'm in here, I also want to show there's this little plastic bushing that is, I guess, like it's crimped or cast around the wire. And when this goes back together, it actually, I'm not going to be able to pull it all the way over because I'm up over here, but this little plastic donut actually goes onto this peg you see right here. So again, when we put this back together, that'll come up again. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and pry those two little ears out and remove the seat back, and we'll catch up after that. All right, I'm going to start with the seat bottom. Flipping it over, you can see there's three main parts. So you have the center insert, and then you have each of the two side bolsters. You'll also notice that there are these little, I don't know what the right word for is, I'm just going to call them tabs, I guess, that like obviously you can tell they've been bent back, and they're bent around either some kind of stitching insert, or sometimes there will be a listing rod that'll go through. In this case, it doesn't feel like there's any listing rod in here. It's just kind of like a folded over seam that's a little bit more reinforced than normal. So if we were to bend back all of these little tabs, again, it's the same story on this side. We should be able to get the material up and over. But looking at the insert, which folds over, so it looks like you'll need to install the insert after you install the two sides. This one does not have any of these metal tabs. However, we do see a few hog rings here that are holding it onto the main springs. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is start by removing the hog rings. And we do see a listing wire here going through. It's this guy. And there's also one on the back. You can see a listing wire has been inserted through. So for all of this, we're going to have to reuse every single listing wire that we find in the entire seat. So let's go ahead and remove the insert. Right. So I've removed these 6 hog rings. There were 3 on each side. There's a better view of that listing wire, like I said, that goes through. Likewise here. So now I should be able to see if it wants to go. Oh, there goes this side. And away it comes. So here's our insert and all the crap that falls out of it. Right away we can just take some observations on the sides. It looks like these are just staples that held it in. The material, the side flaps anyway. See if I can find one that's still kind of doing its job. But yeah, it's just all these little staples. What I'm going to do, and I'll show you later, is not going to use any staples. It's going to use zip ties to kind of almost stitch the back together at a low tension. But anyway, that's what the factory did. It was just a simple staple on the sides, and then these 2 flaps come in. So this is going to be one of the easiest pieces to redo. Alright, so we'll put this to the side and come back to the main frame. Our next task is going to be to go ahead and there's a few hog rings still involved. So on the sides, actually maybe it is better to keep it this way. On the sides you have these, there are listing rods again in here. It's kind of hard to tell, but there's metal. Those metal rods do go down through on both sides. On the inside here. And there are hog rings that we're going to have to get rid of. So there's one there, and looks like there's 3 on each side, maybe 4. So basically you have hog rings on this side, and then it goes over, and then on the other side you have these little metal tabs that bite through the material. I'll also take a second to note, it looks like there's also this really thin wire that's been used to help locate this little piece of excess to get this corner to come out nicely. So take a note of how the corner looks. Maybe take a few pictures, because when you see it from the side, you'll want it to kind of look similar. I don't remember seeing any of this wire on the Only944 kit, but we can probably do something, and it broke. Something that'll achieve the same effect. So I'm going to go ahead and bend all these tabs up, and then we'll come back and cut the hog rings and go from there. And before I forget, notice that on the front there are these two unused tabs. So these are the bite tabs that I was telling you about that, you know, they look like they've been bent over. I'm also seeing some up here on the other side. But if we rewind a second in the video, you'll notice that they were actually not used for this insert. So it was only hog rings. So these were always here on the seat to use, but the factory never used them. And it was the same way on my driver's side seat. So just something to keep in mind. All right. So I've removed all the hog rings and bent up all the tabs on this side, at which point we can get access to this flap, which again has the listing wire in it. I'm just going to slowly start to work it out away from the bottom of the seat. Might also need to kind of work it off the corners here. There are these little tabs that stick up like that. And you should be able to slowly get the cover off. So I'm not going to cover that in the video. It's just something you're going to have to do slowly and carefully. Alright, so I wanted to show you something that's unique to at least the side with the adjuster on it, which you can see is I've got this mostly freed of the foam. I did find a quarter, so this is already looking up. However, it's this little section right here where you can see that the cover is still kind of affixed somehow. If we look at why, there is this little channel that's been built into the actual steel frame, which looks like it's either crimped around the this little seam here or something. So I'm going to just try and just pull it right on out. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight that it's something that you might want to try and replicate when you install the new covers. I can't remember if I did it on my other seat, because I took the skins off of that several years ago, and I don't really remember this being here. But something to keep in mind, it does help it kind of have that nice flush look right here. The only thing left as far as the seat bottom is going to be to remove the upholstery from this. And I think we'll find that it's a simple matter of just pulling out the staples. We have our lovely assistant Stella, QAQC. Yeah, we'll just pull out the staples here along the bottom, and this foam insert should basically just come right on out. Alright, so at this point I wasn't sure if I should continue with stripping the seat back or actually just jump ahead into the reupholstery of the seat bottom, and I've chosen the latter. So in front of me I've gone ahead and taken out the 3 pieces of the kit, which does have 5 pieces. Those are the other 2 there, and laid them out in front of us. I did go ahead and I shot some spray adhesive. The stuff, there was a little bit of a tear in the foam, which I just went ahead and put back together. I didn't do any kind of foam grafting. I will put in some clips of me repairing the foam on the driver's seat, but at this time I'm just gonna gloss over that. Anyway, in front of us, the 2 main pieces for the seat bottom that go on the side bolsters, you'll see this little step here, this square, that goes on the inside. So it could be deceiving. You might think that it could go either way, but when you actually try and put it on both ways, you'll quickly find that it actually has to go this way. The reason that was a bit confusing is on the new seat covers you have this piping. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but this bit, which is obviously some kind of reinforcement so hog rings can go around it. And on the other side, all you have is this channel here, which is for a listing rod. Then when we go back over here onto the original covers that came off, the listing rod is opposite. It's actually on the inside, so this would have gone on the right side of the seat like that, and you can see the rod is here. And then on the other side, where the tabs would have gone through, it's just this kind of reinforced piping. So I'm not sure if it's a mistake or if that's intentional, but either way. So what I'm going to do now, and I've already done it on this one, is I've actually pulled out the listing rod, and I'm going to insert it through on this side, and then repeat the process for the other, and we'll go ahead and just do a dry fit of these 2. Got one slid on here. I've tried to kind of work it down over the foam, On the interior side, the inboard side, you can see it doesn't necessarily want to, it's not level with the line that it obviously is supposed to comply with. So what I'm going to do is basically repeat what's been, it was a common theme in the Only944 instructions that came for the later model seat, is to use zip ties along the way and connect them along here, and then we can cinch them down later to get a nice fit. All the while, we'll be coming back on this side where the listing rod is, and we can go ahead and put this over these little tabs here. I do want to be careful not to have the listing wire be overlapping with this bolt hole, as this is of course where the seat rails bolt to. That's something that I kind of have it like this on my driver's side at the moment. I have not yet put the rails back on, and I'm going to have to sort that out later. Yeah, it would just be, I don't want to have to stack washers on this, so that I just don't want this to be pinched below the rail, if you get what I'm saying. So I'm going to go ahead and zip tie the inboard edge first, and then we'll come back and see how this edge looks. Alright, I've got 5 zip ties inserted now. You can see the gap that's higher toward the front and goes away toward the back. So I don't have them super tight right now. They're all quite a bit loose, which is good. With those in place, that'll at least keep the material from retreating back toward the top. We'll flip it over and work on this side where we have the listing rod and these metal tabs. A quick note, for the zip ties, all I did was just use a pocket knife to just make a very small hole to push them through, and I'm going to do the same thing for these metal tabs. If you try and push this over the metal tabs, you might be able to poke it through, but you know it's going to end up really kind of bowing out the fabric there and causing a little bit of a welt. So as long as you're confident of where you want the tab to be along the seam here, I would recommend using something like a knife to just make a little bit of a pilot hole. That way you're not overstressing the material right around that tab. So I'm going to go ahead, work down the line, being careful not to overlap this hole for the seat rails. I'm going to try and aim for maybe right around there and go all the way across. Still a work in progress, but I'm pretty much there on this side. Since the last clip, what I've done is on the bottom, I ended up, as you can see, moving the zip ties over by 1 row. That was just to bias the slack and the seam more toward the inside. And I've also gone ahead and hog ringed everything in place here, as well as these ends to complete the corners. So I think it looks pretty nice. On the outside, it's what you'd expect. I do have this one awkward little crease here, but that's because I have those little bendy metal tabs. There's one there, and I'm just gonna unbend it and move it over by 1 centimeter or so to get rid of that. But the center console will be here anyway, so it'll never really be seen. But once the center insert is installed, this will be really nice. I'm gonna probably add a few more zip ties and hog rings to try and stretch this down more towards the center. This material just seemed like it was just kind of on the long side. So I'm still working on the lower assembly of the seat, and I found that after I put on this bottom cover here, and I was cinching down the zip ties, that I was hoping that the tension would kind of pull this all together, and I previously had glued this tear together, but I just wasn't happy with it. This is the passenger side, so you'd be entering the car over this bolster, and as you can see, it's just a little bit ballooned out. So what I'm going to do is attempt to pretty much, I don't know, probably with glue and maybe some foam or muslin cloth, I'm going to basically try and fold this over and kind of glue it in place like that, if I can get it to hold. But I was hoping to avoid foam repair on the seat, but it looks like that's unavoidable. Okay, so I have this setting up here. I just used some tape to kind of tie it back down to these springs, and I'm going to try and let it set up like this. But in the meantime, I went ahead and put the skin on this insert. So this is the centerpiece that goes in there, and this is probably the easiest part. Really all I did was I just used some of the included zip ties. I used a knife to poke a couple holes, 5 on each side, and simply pulled it tight. Not too tight, because there's not really any reinforcement material So, you know, just tight enough, right? Really not that much to it. So here it is. It looks pretty good. I didn't bother with any kind of spray adhesive on here. I don't think I'll need to, but that's the center section. I've also completed the foam repair. Well, what I hope is completed anyway. It's just involved, I think you saw in the last clip, I kind of just used tape to kind of fold this over and hold it in position while the spray adhesive dried, and then I just finished it with this little thin piece of muslin cloth here. It's a little bit less bowed out on the side compared to how it looked before, so it still feels good. So hopefully that does the trick. I have the other cover installed now. This was actually just a second ago. I'm still going to be massaging it more, and I will hit it with the garment steamer to just kind of relax some of these wrinkles here. So I did the same thing as I did on this side, which is where to remove a little bit of the bagginess. I moved the hog rings over by one row. Kind of see it there. Time will tell if that was the right call or not. I guess I could always cut the hog rings off and move it back. It wouldn't be a huge deal, but it seems like it wanted to stretch a little bit nicer that way. And when you put this center insert in, you really can't tell the difference. So kind of because it obviously is going to sit like this. So that'll be the next step, is to get this center insert fastened down. This is the bottom section flipped over. As you can see, there were these metal tabs that were actually on the seat, but if you remember, they weren't used on the factory skin. And in fact, when I fold this over, you can see that if we were to use them, we wouldn't really be grabbing this material, which is obviously going to be a little bit better to put a hog ring or clip through than this thin vinyl here. So what I did on my driver's seat and what I'm going to do with this is just hog rings. So this lines up nicely with this area here. Likewise for the back of the seat, you're going to find that this just folds over nicely like that, and I don't think there's any little tabs anyway. So it's just a matter of hog ringing this in, and then that'll be the bottom section complete. Alright, here's the bottom section put together. Still need to do the garment steamer and more massaging on this, but whatever. The rest of it looks great. The only thing I'm not happy with was on this side. There's this wrinkle here, and no matter what I do, it just ends up coming right back. But I take comfort in the fact that this is where the center console will be, and you'll never actually see that. It's not quite so bad on this side. I'm thinking that with the steamer and massaging, that'll kind of go away. It's not bad at all, actually. But yeah, so this looks really nice, and I think that wraps up the bottom section. We'll go back over to the top now. Okay, tearing down the seat top. On this side, the main thing is pretty much just take this out. It should just kind of, there we go. Just press fit. There's our little lever there, which goes to this cable, so we'll just be careful of this. This part here, actually, if you look at it, it's part of the cover and it goes over this metal bracket, so we'll just be careful when we're removing everything not to lose any parts. On the other side, well, there's nothing on the side, it's just this little cutout here. We'll just, again, kind of keep that in mind as we're taking the cover off. And then really everything there is on this little bottom edge, and you'll see a familiar set of these little metal bend tabs, which between the rust and the blending in with the fabric material, they're essentially the same thing as what was on the seat bottom. Those little tabs that you bend back up, and then you can remove the material from them. Looks like there's 6 or so of them, and the seat back is obviously anchored, but it looks like this material, the actual Berber tweed on my seat, is also anchored to the same tab. So I suppose that when we take all these out, we should be able to just actually remove the whole skin as one assembly. So let's go ahead and I'll cut to that. So actually, I need to correct what I just said in my last clip, which is that once we have all these tabs peeled up and the material taken off of them, that we could simply remove it all as one piece. And my driver's seat that you saw in the intro that I already reupholstered, I actually took all of the original fabric off in 2017, so I clearly haven't remembered how it actually goes. And So I apologize for that. It actually does not come off that easily, unfortunately. So I've taken off probably 8 or so hog rings just to get the material separated this far, where I got the wire kind of peeled out of the way from the skin. And now what we have to do, again, I apologize for not remembering this, because the insert is a separate piece, and you'll have to basically go down and kind of, as you go, you're just going to peel this up and find the hog rings and take them out one by one until the insert comes out. At which point you'll be left with this part, which it's not really a good example, but you can kind of see how you'll just have kind of the skin goes like this, so it's a second piece altogether, and then you'll be able to remove that. While we're doing that, you'll also want to keep an eye out for these rods. So there's a metal rod that goes through here, which you're going to reserve for the new skins, and then you'll also see them, see if I can, there's one right there, that go up and down, kind of where the insert meets the rest of the cover. So it's just a matter of removing hog rings now. Okay, so I've gone through and removed the hog rings. I think there were 3 on each side. And now we're just left with, at the top here, I apologize for the lighting, it is hard to see, but if you look closely, you can see there's a couple of hog rings that, there's one of these metal rods as well through the top, and that's what we need to take off next to fully remove the center insert. Alright, got the center insert out. So again, here's that metal rod that goes through this little seam here with a few hog rings. You can now clearly see how this skin is held on to the seat back. So essentially you've got a few hog rings that just hold this flap of material down, but below that, if you peel this back, you'll see again these metal rods here, and it's just another little series of hog rings on each end. At which point, now I'm pretty sure we can actually just peel the whole thing off. Alright, sure enough, she's off. Note again the rod here. There's one on the opposite side. And then there's also this shorter rod here in the top, which we'll have to reuse. Interesting quirk. To me, this little flap of foam down here really seems like it should have been folded up and maybe slotted through here, but that's how it was. There's a little factory hog ring there. So anyway, this is in good condition. I don't really see any obvious damage that needs attention. On the insert, which I'll cover next, again, we're going to reuse this little rod here, and then it seems like this is mostly just a matter of removing these old staples all the way across it. So, easy enough. I've gone ahead and removed the skin from the insert. You have all this, I don't know what this stuff is, the right name for it is called. Looks like it used to be some kind of a tape 40 years ago. But it made a big ass mess when I peeled this skin off. Something that I wanted to point out is you might be asking yourself, so when you get to peeling this skin off, you're going to be seeing this foam, and this is a good, centimeter thick at least. And you might be wondering, well, hold on, does this come off with the skin, or am I actually ruining my foam insert by letting this foam come off with the skin? Well, looking at it, you can tell, if you look at it closely, that it's actually stitched into the cover. And if you look at the new part, they've got something similar going on here. So don't worry about this. This little foam section stays with the old skin. And I will be keeping all of this because there might be a early 911 enthusiast who's looking for a fair condition set. So I'm just trying to keep everything kind of nice. But anyway, so yeah, here's what it looks like. Nothing to it really. The staples pull out relatively easily. Just be careful and don't get tetanus. So what I'm going to do next is going to be really similar to the insert we did on the seat bottom, where I'm essentially just going to use zip ties to make like a little bit of a back and forth across the back here. Whatever staples they used they're not going to be your household staples, so to me I think the zip tie approach is going to make the most sense here. It'll be effective. It's weighted on my driver's side, and it worked out really well, so that'll be that. And here's the upholstery installed on this seat back insert. So I just went with, I didn't go crazy tight on the zip ties here. There's no reinforcement material where I poked the holes through. But everything looks really nice. I'm quite happy with this. And we have the little listing rod inserted here. There's a little flap. So that'll just be a one-to-one replacement of what we took off on the original upholstery. For preparing the new skin to go on, I'm first transferring these listing rods over from the old skin to the new skin. So you have these two listing rods here that go up the full length on each side. And then you've got this small one, which originally went through here, and recall that was hog ringed up to this little metal bracket back there. However, on this kit, what I found out is that they've actually sewn up the ends where this is a little seam where you would put this little rod through. And it was the same thing on my driver's side seat, and the way that I solved that was just by making a small slit on each side and then just putting it through that way. So it looks like it's going to be the same case for the passenger side. So here's the skin mocked up on the seat back. I haven't actually attached anything yet. I did make the little incision that I was talking about in the last clip to push this listing rod through this little seam. And that's the first thing I'm going to do is, if you push this foam back, you can see it there. There's this little piece of framework that's what the factory used to hog ring their seat cover on, so I'm going to mimic that. And then once that's done, it's a little bit baggy still, but as we tighten everything down, we just have to have faith that it'll come out nicely. It's a little bit disconcerting that when you pull this down, it's going to kind of look like this at first, and it did take me a few passes with my garment steamer on the driver's side seat to get it to look more like this. But this is also kind of, when I pull this down, it's got the same thing going on. So anyway, let's get to it. And as we go, you're going to want to pretty much work this down. The goal is going to be to try and just nudge this whole cover this way as we work, because it seems like it tends to accumulate a little bit of slack at the top. We want that to be very tight, and you can see here there's still a little bit of loose material. So I think once I get this tightened onto here, this will be a lot easier because that'll be at least one point fixed, and then we can work our way down the sides. All right, so this little top bit here is done. This is nice and tight. I've also worked my way down one side, so this is good. It has there's not too much loose material here on this bolster. These wrinkles, I just again have to have faith that it'll work its way out when I do the steam cleaner or the garment steamer, and just over time and heat, the material itself will kind of relax. At least it did on my driver's side seat, because it did kind of look similar to this. Worst case scenario, I suppose I could add a few more hog rings to try and pull it in different directions, but I expect this to work its way out. So the next step will be doing this side here, which I think is going to be a little bit harder, because I think this, being the passenger seat, this is the side that would have had more wear on the foam, so I expect there to be more of this going on, where you end up with this little seam of loose material, and it can kind of manifest as this wavy line here whenever you tighten it down. So anyway, that's what yours will probably look like too when you get this far. Alright, so procrastination's not normally a good thing, but it's actually been about 2 months since that last video clip, and I've been really busy with house renovations and other projects. So this is exactly where I picked up last time, and I said that I believe that these wrinkles will work themselves out. It's true. This has just been sitting in the same room, mid 70 degrees temperature for 2 months, and it's already a lot better. as soon as it goes out in the sun, I think it's going to fully resolve. But yeah, when you have this center insert in, it looks really, really sharp. So that's just what you can expect, just to give you a practical example of how these wrinkles and abnormalities will work themselves out as the material does creep and relax over time. So again, I do need to do this last side, and it's similar where it's relaxed a little bit, so I can easily see this going on really nicely now. Material's had a chance to kind of, like I said, creep and relax over the months, so go ahead and do that. And then with that done, I believe the last hog ringing is just going to be getting this top bar here to this. So let's see how this cinches down. Okay, so that's been hog ringed down, and same thing. We'll see how this looks after the garment steamer, and then time and heat for that to work its way out. I'm not worried about it though. On this seat back insert, I was trying to hog ring this in against this rail here, and I was struggling, so I've actually gone to zip ties. I want to talk about this. This is a good thing to touch on. There are two ways to do this. I don't recall exactly what was called out in the official instructions from Only944, but option one is what I did here, which is you put on the entire seat back skin first, and then you do this second. This is way better for access, so you can obviously get in here no problem and work and cinch these down. The alternative is what I did on my driver's side seat, and that is to first hog ring this little bar to that little bar. Problem is that once you do that, you're forever fighting this, and it's getting in the way, and etc. So I did it each way. So far I like this better, however it's at the expense of using zip ties instead of hog rings. I was really just struggling to get the tool in there and actually get the hog ring to bite around both of these metal rods. So I'm hoping that zip ties are going to be fine. I don't know why they wouldn't be. There's no UV on them, and if they break, well, I'll just put in new zip ties, I guess. So this was a lot easier for me for actually accessing everything, but go ahead and cinch this down, and then the last part will be dealing with all this on the bottom. So here we are, and there's a couple things going on here. The order that this should go down, I mean, I'm sure there's some flexibility on this, but I'll just tell you how I'm going to do it. So there are 4 things, well, actually 5. Number 1 is this seat back. Number 2 is this flap from the bottom of the seat insert. And then the last 3 are just the these 3 flaps, or in this little hem or seam or whatever it is, the piping on each side. So, and this is again just how I'm going to do it. You be the final say on your seat. I'm going to start with this flap here, and it's going to go, and you can see there are these little spikes, little bend tabs. So that'll go down first. Second will be this flap here, so that you can't see this seam from the side. Otherwise, it would look like this. So anyway, and then after that, so we've gone here, here, and then I'm just going to bring this up and hog ring this onto one of these little springs there. And then for these 2 flaps, this has to go on first, like that, and then this will go on top of that, and we'll stretch it right over this little row of spike tabs. The only thing that I also want to point out is we have to keep in mind that this is our mechanism here for the seat back adjustment, and there's also these holes on each side for the bolts. You can kind of see them, the corresponding holes here, and then this is for the main pivot bolt on this side. So we're gonna have to come back and kind of go in with a blade and make some cuts and kind of feel this out and feel for the hole and cut that out. But I don't think we can do that until we've stretched it into position first. Otherwise, the hole won't be where we thought it was. So I'm going to go ahead and do this on this side, and then we'll see how it came out. So here's those first 3 on this side. So as you can see, I've just put these 2 flaps right over this one little bend tab here, and then I've just simply hog ringed this piping against one of those springs as discussed. I think that looks pretty nice. Again, we're going to have to make some cuts here later. Anyway, this will all be kind of covered up by all this, and then your little plastic housing for the little adjuster wheel. So I guess at this point I'll just do it over there, and then let's get this pulled down over these tabs. I remember it being a little bit tricky on my driver's side because this is obviously like quite a bit thicker than this sort of material, and the tops of the tabs can kind of disappear sometimes, so it's a little bit finicky, but it does work in the end. Alright, she's all buttoned up, all the little tabs are bent down. I think that looks pretty sharp. We'll just need to go ahead and find our holes, mark them, cut them for final mate up to the seat bottom once I find where I put the bolts a couple months ago. So as a quick refresher, there's also the wire that comes down that, if you remember from earlier, whoops, it goes down and there's this little female socket for it. It's kind of hard to see, and that comes down obviously from your seat back release. So I went ahead and installed this now because that'll help us later when we need some slack in that wire to connect it. You just do this. So I went with the brushed stainless steel, or maybe it's brushed aluminum. It's been a while. I think it really classes up the look of the seat overall. So it's just a simple matter of find it, make a slit, use trimmers to kind of make the slit maybe like 3 or 4 millimeters wide, and then you can basically just friction fit this bottom piece in right over it. I think the plastic piece would be the same way, the stock one, and then this is just a clip fit over that lever. So that'll once we are down here working, we'll just make a slit to feed the wire out of, and then we'll just connect it prior to bolting this all together. So it's not super pretty, but I just made a vertical slit here to get the wire through, and I also made an incision here so this peg could come through, and that is where this rubber bushing goes that just simply presses on like that. I've also made similar holes for these two bolts to go through, which will go into there. On the other side, just a simple matter of snipping out a little hole for the other bolt. So I'm letting the bolts that go through here and here, I'm letting them soak in some white vinegar right now to remove some rust, and then when that's done, I can assemble it. Alright, she's together. On this side is just the flathead bolt. I cleaned that up, got the rust off, and I did a little smear of grease on top of it and on the threads to protect against rust. In a perfect world, normally I would zinc plate it, so I've got my zinc plating stuff up there, but I just didn't feel like doing it right now. If it starts to show surface rust, I will probably just buy new ones later. But anyway, on this side, you can see I've got these two bolts in and snugged down. So I think in the video before I said 13 millimeter was the nominal wrench size. However, they're 15. I forget if I corrected myself yet or not. And the wire, the socket of that wire rope is pushed into the little female catch, and that the black donut bushing has been pushed over the peg before I snug this down. So right now everything seems to work as expected. So this is ready to install after we finish the assembly of the plastic parts. This is going to be an exact opposite of removal. I hate it when that comes up and people say that in instructions, but it actually is true. So all we're going to do is basically slide, it goes like this. So this little, whatever you would want to call that goes in there. It just slides on like that. And then, oh, it's not perfect. When I have two hands available to me, I'll go ahead and finish pushing it on, and yeah, this will go on. Again, remember how we had to use the pliers to get it off, so just go ahead and force this back in, get these little ears over these slots, and then we'll finish it off with just simply clipping this back on, and we'll be done. Well, she's done, ready to be installed. So here's all this gear put on, and there's the driver's side over there. This one's been dry aging as well inside for 2 months. And I'm going to go ahead and just put them out in the hot Houston heat for a few days and let the temperature do its magic and relax this material the last little bit of the way, and then she'll be installed. So thanks again for tuning in. I know this was a long video. I hope that it helped you in some way. The instructions are really good, but there definitely wasn't a lot of specific stuff on the early manual type of seat. So anyway, let me know in the comments down below if you have any improvements, suggestions for the next guy, because I know for a fact that this was an amateur job that you just watched. This is my first time ever doing seats, no question about it. There's a lot of blunders and improvements that could be made, so let me know. See ya.
Alright, so now I'm going to take a break from the rest of the video that you were just watching and move into the topic of foam repair. So the passenger seat that I'm sitting in just now, none was needed. However, on this driver's side seat, there was definitely some severe damage to this bolster here and this part of the seat bottom, pretty much wherever you cross right when you enter or exit the car. So I just want to preface this by saying I'm not a upholstery pro. In fact, this is my first time ever having done any kind of upholstery or foam repair, so please don't take this next section to be an authoritative guide on how you should be doing foam repair, because I know there are better ways, but I'm working with a DIY beginner experience level, and I'm just trying to do a sufficient job. I'm not interested in spending hours and hours and hours of time on or hundreds of dollars on a professional to do it. So with that being said, feel free to skip forward through the next few minutes if this doesn't apply to you or you already have something lined up. But this is the foam repair that I did on the seat.
And there are two main areas. This is my driver's side seat, so I might put this in the rest of the video, which is focusing on the passenger side, but the driver's side really had some damage. So on this bolster, you can see even when I can pinch it back together, and there's some areas even down to the frame here, and also down there where it's just completely missing the foam, and the structure is a little bit, it just feels like it's soft here compared to this side maybe. So, and then on the actual bottom, so I've already actually done this side. It's a similar thing. I actually already removed the foam from the frame here, and you can see it's all blown out. So what I'm going to do is essentially I'm just going to use this spray adhesive stuff, which I looked it up online, and this stuff actually does work pretty well for foam. And I'm going to just try and graft in some donor foam from another set of Recaro seats that I have that are really busted, and we'll go ahead and see how that turns out. Alright, so I've just gone ahead and helped myself to this big chunk of foam out of this seat. This seat it's been trashed for a long time. These are out of the old rally cars, so this is pretty much the same exact foam that's in our sports seats now, so I'll just go ahead and cut this up and we'll graft it in the best we can. Alright, I just did the rough fit, so I've just cut a few pieces off. Kind of looks weird. With one hand I'm going to struggle to push it together, but these pieces should bring it mostly flush. This one down here, like that. Below this I did add a little bit of packing, just these small little pieces to wherever there was evidence of the foam being a little bit collapsed. So there's another one in there like that. So now my next step is going to be to go ahead and use the spray adhesive to get the foam back together as best I can. With that done, I'm anticipating that it's gonna there's gonna be some seams along the top where the pieces all meet back together. And my plan for that is I have two things that I'm gonna try. One is using this muslin or cheesecloth, and this is a very it's kind of like a see-through fabric material, which should, I'm hoping, kind of level out the top without adding too much thickness, because I don't want the seam where this ends and the foam begins again to kind of be popping up through the vinyl. I also have this 2mm thick EVA foam, which is actually, believe it or not, whenever I googled this, it was all the cosplay people that were posting videos about it, and they're really excited about it. Alright, so I just did the first bit of adhesive spray. I left in the small little inner chunks to build the structure back up, but I left these two, the grafted foam chunks out for now. I just wanted to let it set up first. I'm using some packing tape to hold it together while it sets. It still feels a little bit tacky. It's been about 2 or 3 minutes now. So we'll see where this goes. The thought did cross my mind to just leave some kind of tape on here even after all the work is done, because that kind of, as you can see, it does kind of hide the seams between the different foam pieces, but I'm not a fan of this crinkly noise. So maybe I'm sure there's other kinds of tape that would, they'd be a lot better choice than packing tape. So I'm thinking about that, but at the moment I'm going to keep on proceeding with the original plan. Alright, it's been about 10 minutes total now, and this part actually feels really good. I'm not going to stress test it, but I'd say that's mission accomplished on the main tear. I've gone ahead and I've also started putting in this lower piece, and I'm just going to try covering it with tape, hoping that it'll set up like this and it'll be as close to flush as possible without having to do as much touch-up work on it. So I'm going to go ahead, and if I can do this with one hand, I'm going to actually try and do this live here. We're going to spray the upper piece. I'll get that part. Flip her over. And then just very carefully. Put her in there like that. And then something I've seen on YouTube, the professional guys will do is they'll kind of do a pinching thing around the edge. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that on all. It's already not working. I think they're using a different kind of adhesive that maybe bonds more quickly. But I'm just going to tape this again over the top like I did here, and let it set up, and then we'll come back and see how it actually turned out. Alright, kind of an intermediate update here. I've taken all the tape off, and this bottom one turned out pretty well. I don't know how you can really see it, but I'm happy with that. It's pretty much flush. It's not perfect, but I think I'm definitely going to use some of the cheesecloth and go over the top, and I think it'll blend in really nicely. This top one had, when I took the tape off, everything kind of puffed out and there was a bigger gap. So what I was doing was, as you can maybe tell from my fingers, was just kind of holding it there for 3 or 4 minutes while I sprayed some new glue in and just held it there. But I'm trying it with the binder clips now in hopes that works better. I can walk away and just let it set for a long time. I want this area to be nice. But overall, I'd say that's not bad. If you kind of look at it from the side, we've definitely achieved the original profile here, and this is sturdy here. Back over on this piece, I've also taken the liberty of gluing it back together. I'm not really excited about this. What I'm probably going to do is cut some repair pieces, and then I might actually try this 2mm foam. And because this is like a piece by itself, I can probably just do the whole thing in this foam. My problem with doing the foam on this would be that there's going to be a point where the foam ends, and it might just be like a weird crease line in the finished product. So okay, so I finished that little area up there, and I've gone ahead and applied a few layers of the cheesecloth or muslin cloth. It visually looks like it's definitely thicker in some areas, but the stuff is so thin you can't even feel the transition. Like right here, I physically can't even feel it. It's just because it's close to transparent, so whenever you have a couple layers that are alternating, it just looks like it's built up more. So I think that with the thickness of the vinyl going on, this won't even be noticeable. It's also hopefully going to act as kind of a load spreader to mechanically stabilize the foam a little bit. So in the future it doesn't have the same problem. It should reinforce it. I installed it using the same Scotch Super 77 adhesive, and it sticks very nicely to the foam, and it's really doing a good job of tying everything together. So right here you can kind of see a small gap, but this is almost acting like a rebar over the top of it. So I'm excited to see how this turns out. I'm going to let it harden up and then turn our attention back to this piece. Alright, so I'm going with the EVA foam on this piece here. I've just sprayed down a bit and I'm letting this set up on it. It seems like it's so far making a really good bond. So we'll cut it along the bottom and kind of just work it over bit by bit and see where we land. Alright, so I finished wrapping this other little side piece here, and there's a few seams left over that are definitely going to require some further work, but overall, as far as where the damage was, I'm pleased with how that came out. I think it's going to look really smooth. I already took the liberty of putting down some cheesecloth over this seam here. So again, it's just going to serve to not only reinforce it, but blend it out when the vinyl covering is on top of it later. And I'm going to do the same thing up here. So it should be a nice, smooth, it'll look just like this one when it's done. Okay, so I've gone ahead and installed the vinyl covers over the repaired areas now. So I just wanted to kind of show how they look. So on this one here, it's very nice and smooth. I'm not really seeing any seams. There's a few wrinkles in the vinyl. If I pull them straight, you can see that we're not seeing any seams anywhere. So I'm really happy with this. It feels very nice and solid and secure, and it looks visually pretty similar as far as compared to the other bolster on the other side. On the upper seat back, again, there's still some wrinkles that have yet to be worked out. So some of this, I'm hoping that using a blow dryer or a garment steamer will help to get some of the wrinkles out. That's not really to do with the foam repair. That's mostly just a byproduct of a brand new vinyl covering. So we'll just ignore the vinyl and just kind of look at this is the one that didn't need to be repaired, and you can see how smooth it is. And here's the one that we did repair. There's a few, like I said, wrinkles, but if I pull them tight, you can see that the repaired area looks really good. Yeah, I'm really happy with that.